Okay guys, so in this video I'm going to walk you through rendering. So let's get into it. So rendering, when we are talking about a server and a client, is basically just the server has some text or some representation of something, and basically just a template. It's a template of a data structure, and what you want is to be able to declare variables or something of that nature, or add some logic into that template and create a certain template and return it to the client. Now, what does that mean? Well, the easiest way to explain it is basically that when you render so-called a HTML page for a client or a user, what usually happens is that you declare a bunch of markup, HTML if you will, and then you want to be able to put dynamic data on the page. I mean, if you think about it logically, let's say one of your news sites where there are different articles being uploaded every day. So the structure of the web page is still the same. You have your image and you have your text and so forth, but the content itself, like the image itself and the text itself, is going to be dynamic, and that's where rendering comes in. So the structure of the page is going to stay the same, but in the different places where all this content is going to be placed, that's where you render, quote unquote, in that in that information. But rendering isn't exclusive to HTML. It's not something that just happens on web pages. You can do it with any string. So if we have a look at this here, we have our first test here, which says, okay, it's going to return a rendered string, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the root, and I expect a 200 back, and then I expect that the text representation of what I get back is just foo undefined, because I haven't declared anything. So let's just look at that. First and foremost, I create a little Express server, and then I set my views to be the directory of this just basically the directory. And this is just an Express way of saying that, hey, for all stuff that I want to render, go to this directory. And underscore underscore dir name is just its node for saying this directory that we are in right now. And then I set a view engine. In other words, Express does not have its own rendering library as of like by default, so you import one, and I use EGS for this basically. And then if we just look at this endpoint here, so what I'm saying here is that, all right, go to when I hit the root of my application, just return a string where foo is set to whatever query is. Or if I have a foo on my query object, right? And this is a very easy. I hope this illustrates it. This is called string interpolation. So it's not like it's not real rendering per se, but it's the same thing. I have this string, a template string, and I have a dynamic value that I can plug in any type of information I want into, and then the server will simply return that string when I plugged in my value. That's how in essence rendering works, and it can work for any file, for any text. It's not exclusive to HTML. That's the thing I want you to remember here. Rendering does not equal HTML. It can be done for absolutely anything. So now if we take a look at the next thing here, so we have this other value. If I give it the query as we saw earlier of foo equal to 1, then I expect to get back foo 1. And if we look at that code again, that's exactly what we expect to get back, right? Nothing tricky or fancy about it at all. But let's look at an HTML example, which is much more common. So I'm going to go to /HTML, and now I expect that what I get back is this weird string here. Now what is this? Well, this is HTML. That's all it is. It's just, and that's what HTML actually is, guys. It's just a string or a text that uses a certain pseudo language, which is what we call HTML or hypertext markup language. And because I use these tags in this way, when I send this to the browser, if I upload this string, if I copy paste this, put this in a file, and open that file in my browser, I will see a web page. That's all this is. HTML is nothing but text using a certain pseudo language structure of commands, if you will, or tags that the browser can understand. But since we're not using a browser here, we're just using unit tests like here, we won't see anything. We are just asserting that the response that we're getting is in the correct format. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm just going to do some magic here to create a formatted version of this, because I need to do a bit of formatting on the return string and just basically remove all the new lines and set them to empty strings so that there's no new lines in the returning value in the return from the server. And then I just assert that they are equal, and since the tests are all passing, this should work, or it does work. And this is my rendered file. Like, this is an EGS file, which all it is, as you can see, it's the same structure here, and then I have this dynamic value of foo here, and yeah, that's my silly little HTML file. And if we look at that, that's actually what we're expecting to get back. We expect all of these tags and then this empty space here and the rest of the tags. And finally, if I give it a value of foo equal to 1, I expect the same structure but with a few spaces here and a 1. And that's exactly what I get. So what's going to happen now is that Express is going to hit this endpoint here, and then we call the render function with .index, like this file here, and we pass it a variable of foo, which contains the variable, the query parameter of foo, that if we are passing something to our server, right? If we have declared it. And then what's going to happen is that the Express is going to go and grab this file here, read it into memory, and then it's going to go through this file and find, oh, this value here. All right, I'm going to go and grab, I'm going to grab this parameter that I put into my function here, and I'm just going to plug in the value here. And when I've gone through the whole file and plugged in all the values, I'm just going to return the string, like the text, that is the result of rendering this file. And that's all rendering is. So what I want you to take away from this is to remember, rendering is not exclusive to HTML. It can be done for any string, and all it is that you have a template text or a template string of some sort with some variable values inside of it that are dynamic, that you can switch those out whenever you want to, but the template stays the same. Okay? Have a great day.